Chargers. Touchdown, UCLA.
With USC great and NFL stud, Frosty Rucker.
The Trojans back in front.
And LAFB founder Ryan Dyrud on the Believe Podcast Network and LAFBnetwork.com. This is your destination for Los Angeles football.
What's going on, Los Angeles? Welcome to the LA Football Show on the newly branded The Mightier 1090 ESPN Radio. Fridays at 5. Excited about that new affiliate as the 1090 is now Southern California's ESPN Radio affiliate. Pretty sweet. Always on the LA Football Network and on the Believe Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ryan Dyrud. Thanks for tuning in, making us a part of your day. It's the weekend. Got things to look forward to. We got Rams in the playoffs. You know, no more negativity. I know the season didn't necessarily end how we all wanted to, but hey, we're in the playoffs. We're in the tournament. It's all that matters. We have Bo Brack. He's host of the Locked On Cardinals podcast. He's going to join me to help preview this round 3 rubber match between these two teams. Going to be a good one at SoFi on Monday Night Football. I believe this is the first ever Monday night playoff game, if I'm not mistaken. Interesting how they did the schedule. I'm sure there's a lot of differing opinions. From a viewer standpoint, it's great. I mean, we get football Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. From a competition standpoint, I know there's opinions that, you know, well, then you get the next week, you have a less day to practice and prepare. There's a disadvantage. You know, I don't know. We're not going to get into that. But anyway, Rams play on Monday. If you need tickets to that game, we gotta pack that place. Ramley's got to show up. And I know they will. I know we will. But if you need tickets, tickpick.com/LAFB is the place to get them. Tickets are only going for like $80 right now. That is cheap for a playoff game on TickPick. You go to TickPick, tickpick.com/LAFB, and there's no fees. So that $80 ticket price is the final price. You don't get those $20 StubHub fees or Ticketmaster fees. So I'll have the link in the description if you're watching on YouTube or listening on podcasts. But if you're on radio, it's just tickpick.com/LAFB. Let's pack that place. We actually created these Ramley rally towels we have for sale up on LAFB Network. And it would be so cool. You know, at this point, you know, I don't know if you'd get him in time by Monday, but especially if the Rams move on in the playoffs and get another home game. If we pack SoFi with these rally towels, it's got it says Ramley with Jalen Ramsey as the Y. And, you know, I'll put that in the description as well if you're interested. I think it'd be super cool that we start, you know, coming together. We need something to do as a fan base, and I think getting this rally towel going would be sweet. Would be a lot of fun. So check that out. At the bottom of the hour or after my guest joins me, UCLA big news yesterday. For those that did not hear, Jerry Azzinaro, longtime defensive coordinator, basically attached at the hip of Chip Kelly for his coaching career, resigned yesterday. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, what that means for the program and some potential candidates that can come to Westwood. And I've said it before on this show, if you get even a top 50 defense, because they've been bad, like in the hundreds bad. If you get even a top 50 defense with what this team can do on offense, I know all the players leaving for the draft, that's a dangerous team. If you get a defense that can just make some stops. I mean, this was like the number 1 scoring offense in the Pac-12. So anyway, we'll get all into that and some excitement. You know, you never want to see anyone out of a job by any means. So not excitement necessarily in that regard, but just in terms of football moving forward, this is a good move for the program. And obviously they need to make the right hire. But I think there's some good names out there that we'll get into. And then finally, I'm putting a bow on this Brandon Staley talk. I've talked about it a lot throughout the week. The amount of hate and vitriol this guy has gotten all of a sudden is insane to me. With timeout gate, which is just ridiculous in my opinion. 4th downs, which I'll show you some numbers that are, you know, people don't like facts. They like narratives nowadays. Media especially. It's insane. national media that watched probably one game this year of Chargers football that happened to be that Chargers Raiders game now have these glowing opinions on Brandon Staley as a coach. So anyway, I'm going to end the show with that, put a bow on it, and then Chargers talk the rest of this offseason will be about how to move forward. We're not recapping any of this crap anymore. But I just want to mention it one more time, especially since we're on radio today. But before we get to that, let's get into playoffs, positives. Rams are in it. Bo Brock joining me right now. Let's get into it. All right, Rams fans, what is up? Welcome in to the LA Football Show right here on the LA Football Network and on AM the Mightier ESPN 1090. Excited to preview this Rams playoff game. I know there's kind of a weird vibe around the Rams right now after a tough loss, but we are in the playoffs. We are facing an opponent that we know well, the Arizona Cardinals. And to help me preview that matchup on a Monday night is the host of the Locked On Cardinals podcast, Bo Brock. What's going on, brother? Thanks for joining me. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Ryan. I'm trying to figure out which way I want to go with this team because these two teams feel like they're backing into the postseason. You get that sense too?
Yeah, it's, I was going to get into that, but we'll just get it out right off the bat. It's funny because out here in Rams Nation, won 4 straight. Vibes were feeling good after a tough 3-game stretch in the middle of the season, but it's like, okay, we turned things around. Matthew Stafford has had some struggles here and there, but the defense has picked him up. The special teams has picked him up. So it's like, okay, collectively, this is a great team. But every year, one of the main goals is to beat the Niners, and they haven't done it now for 3 straight years. And to not do it again, just put a sense out here in LA that this, like, I'm not saying I believe this, but the fan base basically thinks this team's not going far if we can't beat the Niners. The Cardinals, on the other hand, I mean, that's what I'll pose to you, lost 4 of their last 5, really backing into the playoffs. They were, in week 10, 11, not the best team in the NFL, not the NFC West, not the NFC, the NFL. And now a very different sense. So what's kind of the vibe down there on this team, and how do you feel about these guys going into the playoffs?
Yeah, it's weird. It's cautiously optimistic as this game draws closer, but you can't, just kind of turn your nose up, maybe turn a blind eye to the trends. I mean, this is a team that hasn't played good football for 5 weeks. It really hasn't. And, why are they such a Jekyll and Hyde group? Obviously, they've dealt with injuries. They've dealt with, positive tests, not being at full strength. But I don't think that's the reason. It's mostly execution. I mean, it's guys going out there and making plays that they were making earlier in the season that they're not making, that they haven't made the last couple of weeks. Like Kyler Murray's been making some great passes out there, but some of his receivers haven't been coming up with the catch. Without DeAndre Hopkins, sure, you can point to that. But, I mean, you're an NFL receiver. If the ball hits you in the hands, you should bring that in. You should haul that in. And the Arizona Cardinals, they just haven't seen that. Outside of the Dallas game, I thought that they played well in Dallas, but then they immediately took 2 steps back again against the Seattle Seahawks in the regular season finale, where they lost the opportunity at winning the NFC West title. Lack of execution in the red zone. The red zone's a completely different animal right now without DeAndre Hopkins. They've been either without Chase Edmonds or James Conner the last couple of weeks. And with Kyler Murray not really having his first option, his second option available, they've just been very pedestrian to below average in the red zone, and they've had to rely on Matt Prater. And this team, they just can't. They're not successful when they're settling for field goals. Not a lot of teams are, and there's a lot of missed opportunities down close. And when you've got Kyler Murray and the weapon that is his legs, Ryan, I mean, I don't know why you don't utilize it. I understand in the regular season you're trying to just get him to the big dance healthy, but now come Monday night, you got to think that they got to utilize everything to beat this Rams team. But it's been just such a Jekyll and Hyde. I think that the team obviously has the ability to do it, but they've got to buck a serious bad trend right now.
Yeah. At a bad time. Everyone talks about, it's all about which team is hot going to the playoffs. And you could argue both these teams, but specifically, unfortunately, the Cardinals are definitely not hot right now. What's been, I guess, in your opinion, the summation of Cliff Kingsbury? Because I think he's every year he's kind of that coach where everyone's like, yeah, great offensive mind. Can he put it all together? Through whatever it was, 12 weeks, sitting at 10-2. Looked like he put it all together, calling great games. The offense was playing good. Vance Joseph was doing great on the defense. And then we see this stretch. Do you attribute any of that to Cliff, or is it, like you said, just kind of poor execution and not getting it done by the players?
Cliff Kingsbury is talking politics at the family dinner table with Cardinals fans right now. Very polarizing subject. I'm in the group of, I think Cliff Kingsbury has been overall a successful head coach for the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, you go from one of the worst built rosters in 2018, 3 wins to 5 wins to 8 wins to now 11 wins. But you can't deny that his team slump at the end of the season, and that's a big issue for Cliff Kingsbury. Is he a part of the problem? Absolutely. I mean, this is a whole group kind of thing. This isn't just on a play calling thing with Cliff Kingsbury. I think his play calling has taken a step forward in 2021. I think that he's proven that he belongs as an NFL head coach. I thought the jury was out going into this season, but he's shown that he can be a guy to take them to where they want to go, and that's the postseason and beyond. We'll see. I mean, he's 42 years old. Ryan, this is a guy that was plucked out of being fired from his alma mater. This is a guy that probably shouldn't have even been hired in the beginning. But for him to be kind of a young, raw project that you really like what he has as far as a play caller, you have to be patient. And we're sitting here year 3, and I think he's shown, improving in wins, improving in offensive performance. That's exactly what you wanted from him. So, where's the big issue? But there are still – you're taking your lumps. He's learning just as much as Kyler Murray's learning, and all the younger players in the league are learning. So he's not. Hopefully, he's not a finished product. We don't know who he is as a finished product, but right now, Cliff Kingsbury's got to play that game of chess like they do in the NFL, because adjustments is the key to the game. He's got to adjust because the NFL has the blueprint on how to slow down the Arizona Cardinals, and he hasn't kind of made that counter move. And it's up to him, because you have to do that at some point. If you don't adapt, you're done. You're going to die in the NFL. And he's certainly a part of the problem. But overall, I think he's proven that he deserves, a longer tenure here in the desert.
Yeah. I think, I mean, you win 11 wins in this league. I think you need to be, commended for that, regardless of when you had lumps or not. I think that's impressive, especially in the NFC West, this division that is the best division in football. Looking at Vance Joseph, who I think is a good coach in this league. Obviously, I think it came out this morning or maybe yesterday that he's got a couple head coaching interviews lining up here soon. And, he was getting a lot of talks early on too about what he's done with his defense. Obviously a high character guy, players like playing for him. What's been your summation on him for the season now that we are heading into the playoffs? Is he a guy that has really turned this defense around, or is it just they have so much talent, how can you not kind of thing?
Right. Yeah, it's a mix of both, but he's slumping just with the rest of the crew right now. I mean, he came out of the gates hot, and his defense looked like it was a top 10 group, and they were disruptive, and they were setting the tone for the entire team. It was come out, play defense, force a turnover, force a 3 and out, and life was good. And then now, the scheme that they run, where they like to pressure on early downs and they like to go for negative plays, it's blowing up in their face. I mean, it was an absolute just catastrophe on Sunday, where you had Rashad Penny, who we thought was a bust. In the last 3 weeks, he looks like the best running back in the league. He rushed for 190 yards. I think that Vance Joseph is also dealing with, I think J.J. Watt's training to play. And if you put a playmaker the caliber of J.J. Watt, even if he's not at 100%, coming off of the injuries that he had in the procedures that he had, it's still going to improve your group, and it's going to add a big player into where you really want to attack the Rams in the interior of that offensive line. Vance Joseph, I think he just is kind of a boom bust defensive coordinator, and that's his scheme. He likes to create negative plays, and he likes to put the opposing offenses in third and long. And if he can do that, life will be good. But if he can't, it can be the world can just collapse in on him. So that's where the Arizona Cardinals are. And if things can run according to plan, Ryan, things can look great come Monday night. And if not, they could be chasing a lead the entire game, or the Rams can win handily. But Vance Joseph has done, much like Cliff Kingsbury, very well. I don't know about getting another chance at the head coaching position. I think that he's got, a reported interview with the Dolphins. It's like, the Dolphins, what are you doing? Like, I know VJ is taking a step in the right direction as a coordinator, but we've seen him as a head coach. He wasn't as good as Brian Flores. You fired Flores, and you want to go take a step back for a guy who struggled in the position. It doesn't make sense. You didn't have a plan. Why did you fire the guy? That's a whole nother conversation.
that head scratching, head scratching. And like the only thing I can think of, and you mentioned they don't have a plan. It doesn't seem like it, but they had to have thought they did. Like they were like, okay, this is the guy we want, like someone.
Yeah, and
And
they don't. And that's my also case about Cliff Kingsbury, Cardinals fans. Is like, okay, if you're gonna move off Cliff, who's the proven commodity out there that you would go after? And I don't think there's a deep enough coaching crop out there to where you could say, hey, you can bring him in.
yeah, exactly. And what they've done well is how can you replicate that quickly? Because if you go from 11-team win, which obviously I don't think the Cardinals are. I mean, you know better than me, but I would think they'd be silly to move on at this point unless they get blown out Monday night. Maybe there's that question comes up. But yeah, it seems like Vance is kind of the archetype to Raheem Morris, the Rams defensive coordinator, because the Rams defense predicates on not giving up big plays, kind of keeping everything in front of them, letting you dink and dunk, letting you kind of bleed you away and then clamp up in the red zone. And then, as you mentioned, the Vance Joseph defense is more like boom or bust. Like either it's going to look dynamic and great, or we're going to see that Monday night performance where Matthew Stafford was just lighting it up and throwing out Hail Marys down the field. And looking back at that matchup, because that'll kind of maybe give us some insight into this coming up matchup. On the Rams, I look back, I forget the game was actually only a 7-point game. It felt like the Rams like won by a lot more. And I was like, oh, wow, it actually was only a 7-point game. But what do you think went wrong? Because the first matchup was the opposite. The Cardinals looked absolutely great. They totally stifled the Rams' run game. They got after Matthew Stafford. They I think were literally the only team that contained Cooper Kupp to under 90 yards this season, which is mind blowing in this day and age. So, how did they, in your opinion, were able to do it in the matchup number 1, weren't able to do it in matchup number 2, and what do you think they need to do now in the menage a trois round 3 to stifle this offense yet again?
Oh man, the grudge match, right, between these two teams, 1-1, and if you look at both the contests, what went right in week 4 and what went wrong Monday Night Football, and it was limiting the big plays. I mean, I can remember there was a couple key turnovers in the first matchup that the Arizona Cardinals were able to kind of change the tone in that game. Sony Michel fumbled the football, and Matthew Stafford had a bad pass picked off by Byron Murphy, and then the difference was, Matthew Stafford looked like Jared Goff for the last couple seasons against the Arizona Cardinals, where he was struggling and then got right against the Cardinals on Monday night. Far too often, Sean McVay quarterbacks get right against the Cardinals defense. But he was able to do so by leaning on Cooper Kupp, a guy who only had 60-plus yards in the first matchup. The next matchup, what do you have, 11 catches for over 100 yards, and he was just a monster and moving the chains. And they were rolling Matthew Stafford out. They were keeping him kind of clean in the entire contest, and that's the biggest thing, is getting that pressure on Matthew Stafford, getting him off his spot, making him make bad passes and miss on simple throws that he usually hits because he's under duress. I think that's the biggest key as far as slowing this offense down. They're going to need a big game from their cornerbacks, their secondary, but it's all going to come down to the front seven. If they can create that pressure, if they can really just make Matthew Stafford's night a living hell, a pedestrian secondary can cover just enough against Cooper Kupp and crew to where they can get enough, stops to where their offense can go to work. It didn't happen on that Monday night game, but they didn't have any takeaways in that game. They didn't have any game shifting moments that they did in the first matchup that they were able to kind of take advantage of, and they need them. That's what kind of is part of it. That's part of the magic elixir that got them to 11 wins this season, is winning the takeaway battle and taking advantage of it with a solid offensive performance.
Yeah, if you watch the last Rams game against the Niners, that was exactly what they did. They were in Stafford's face all game long. Offensive line, probably one of their worst games of the season. An opportune time. I know they'll be looking to bounce back, but if the Cardinals can replicate that, that really is, as you said, the recipe to, slow down and stop this offense. I think this offense, when going right, when McVay is calling right, it's well balanced. Sony Michel has really become a really good feature back in this system. You got Cam Akers back, but McVay is going to get pass happy at some point. He always does. It never fails. Even if the running game's working great, averaging 6 yards a carry, they're still going to hit that 25 pass mark and get it going soon. So if Arizona can get in Stafford's face, that's where, the Rams need to be worried. Who is it on this defensive front this year? Because, I feel like wrong, right, whatever, indifferent, the Cardinals never really get talked about a lot nationally. I mean, Chandler Jones is one of the best pass rushers in the game, and everyone forgets about him every single year. So who's kind of been that guy? And if JJ Watt's back, obviously that plays a huge role, but who's been the guy in the middle, not necessarily on the edge? Because I think that is the biggest thing too for a pass rush against Stafford is getting pressure in the middle so Stafford can't step into his throws. So who do the Rams fans kind of need to look for and like pencil in or circle, like this is the guy we need to stop on Monday night?
99. I mean, it's Justin James. If he's back in the lineup, he can do so many things that don't show up in the box score that disrupt the game, getting his hands up, batting down balls, just pushing offensive linemen back into the pocket. He can do those things even if he's not at 100%. If it's not J.J. Watt, if for some reason we don't see him, I mean, he's back on the practice field. I don't think that he would go out there and get back on the practice field and not play. It would take, somebody tackling him in the tunnel, getting out to the field for him to not be on the playing field. But, Zach Allen, who's also a guy who's iffy to play, he's emerged in the middle of that defensive line. And then Jordan Phillips might be a guy that can get out there and play and be disruptive. But, it's a rotation. It really is. Even with J.J. Watt, it's going to be a rotation. The age, obviously, where he is physically. And then, I mean, if you don't have an Aaron Donald, you have to have a rotation, right? To really get the pressure that you want, play in and play out. So it's going to be just a collection of guys, at least on the inside of that defensive line. And guys on the outside, Marcus Golden and Chandler Jones, you'll look at the stats from the season, you'll be like, wow, these guys are game wreckers. But it was like a game here and then they disappear. It needs to be a consistent effort from this front seven to really have a chance come Monday night.
Yeah, didn't Jones have like 5 sacks in that first game or 4 sacks in week 1?
Yeah, he had 5 sacks and I think 2 forced fumbles. And, Marcus Golden had his time.
Yeah.
I mean, most of those guys are in the league leaders as far as forced fumbles and getting to the quarterback double digits. They did that. I don't think you'd find an edge rusher combo that had more sacks like on the outside than those 2 guys. But, it just wasn't as consistent as they needed to be successful down the stretch.
Yeah, and that'll be a big story to see what happens Monday. Last question for you, Bo, and then I'll get you out of here with the prediction. But you mentioned 99. We got to talk about 99 on the Rams side. You mentioned Aaron Donald. 3 sacks on Kyler Murray in that week, whatever it was, the second matchup, Monday Night Football. Complete game record. Von Miller now is coming into his own finally with this Rams squad. How do you, I mean, not even a fair question. How do you slow down a guy like Aaron Donald? What do you expect the Cardinals to do? Do they move Kyler just out of the pocket in this game? Or do you kind of just hope for the best and hope you get the double and triple teams to slow him down?
You run the damn ball, right? You run the football. You have a successful running game. And they did in the first matchup, they had 216 yards on the ground.
Yeah.
In the second matchup, they had 103. That's a big difference. I mean, it can hold, even a guy like Aaron Donald at bay. Mostly those other guys, right? The supporting cast that can sometimes, with Aaron Donald wreaking all that havoc, kind of pick up some sacks and make some negative plays. And Leonard Floyd, we'll see what everybody's availability is, and Von Miller and all those guys. I think that it's going to come down to running the football, because if you can run the football, it can set up Kyler Murray and turn him in from a good quarterback to a really elite quarterback, just with having that threat. And I think that's the only way you can cut. Aaron Donald's going to eat. Like, he's going to get his. He's going to have 1 to 2 sacks. And he's just been the kryptonite to this Arizona Cardinals team ever since Sean McVay came into town. What are they, 9-1 against this Cardinals crew? Kyler Murray's 1-5 overall. He's got his most picks against any other opponent. He's been sacked the most times by the Rams than any other team. So it's their kryptonite. They've just got to buck this trend. They've got to change the narrative, not only recent history and overall, just history overall with this team against the Rams come Monday night.
Yeah, it's crazy. The Niners are the Rams kryptonite, and the Rams are the Cardinals kryptonite. It's just, that is just how it is at this point. I said last moment, real quickly, are James Conner and Chase Edmonds looking like they're trending to go?
Yeah, Chase Edmonds is going to be back. James Conner is going to be more of a game time decision. But I think at this point, why not? At least have him for short yardage situations, and that's where he's thrived. And James Conner, he's kind of reverting back to James Conner if he's healthy, and he hasn't been healthy. And it's 18 total touchdowns this season. He's so big as far as where the Cardinals have struggled mightily in the red zone. You got to have a guy like James Conner. But if they can get that duo going again and Kyler Murray's legs, like I said, running the football becomes a lot easier. Otherwise, you're lacking either in a short yardage guy, or you're lacking in your guy as far as Chase Edmonds, who can gash for a big game.
Yeah, and that'll be huge to monitor too, because the Rams have been inconsistent against the run. Some weeks look great. Ernest Jones, their young rookie, who's I think come on really good, but he's on the IR, so he should miss this game again, which is a big loss. We saw the Niners obviously gash them in the running game. They couldn't tackle. So, I mean, a guy like James Conner in the lineup is huge for you guys and huge in this matchup. And so that being said, who do you like in this one? 11-6, still weird to say that. 11-6 Cardinals, 12-5 Rams, the 4-5 seed, the rubber match. Monday Night Football. Who you taking?
I'm taking the Arizona Cardinals in this game, and I know it's crazy. Like I mentioned all the stats, McVay against the Cardinals and where they're trending, but I think that if Matthew Stafford is not playing his best football right now, and he's been able to, the Rams have been able to overcome that because they've been playing some bad teams, the Vikings, the Ravens without Lamar Jackson, and I think if he has a poor performance, if that trend continues, the Arizona Cardinals can take advantage of it. Now, I'm not saying they're going to run away with it like week 4, but I fully expect Kyler Murray to have one of his best performances of the season. He seems to step up when the lights are a little bit brighter. I say that, and the Cardinals are 0-3 in primetime. He's got to impress the Manning cast. I think that the Arizona Cardinals can take this one away, get back on track, get a big win for this franchise. They're fully capable of it. I think that that's possible, and they can win this one, 29-26.
Yeah, it should be a game. If the Cardinals pull it off, and if the Rams lose, there is going to be a lot of questions. There's going to be riots in the streets because of what the Rams did this offseason, and there's already fans that are, mailing it in basically after the end of the year. And if they go one and done in the playoffs, I mean, I'm not saying McVay's job is unsafe, and I don't think it should be by any means, but there will be a lot of questions going in the next year. That's for sure.
No doubt about it. No trip to Mexico for Stafford and McVay this time. It better not, because
at least not together. Yeah.
Curious.
Yeah. No Instagram posts from the wives hanging out down there. Bo Brock, appreciate you, man. Host of Locked On Cardinals. Enjoy the game. Hopefully I'll be there. If you happen to make a last minute trip to LA, let me know. I'll get you a beer. But thanks for coming on the show, man. Appreciate you.
Sounds good, man. Thanks for having me, Ryan.
All right. Big thanks to Bo for coming on the show. Great insight there. We were 3 for 3 on Cardinals guests this year. We had some good ones. We had ESPN's Josh Weinfuss. We had Darren as the Arizona Cardinals team reporter, and now a podcaster from Locked On Network. So 3 for 3. Good guess. Huge matchup, man. I mean, this game, I said it there at the end of it. I've been very positive on this team. It's a 12-win team. They've had some issues. They had a bad 3-game losing streak. They lost 2 to the Niners. They're not perfect. And you would hope with what they did in the offseason, I know the thought was, man, this should be an 18-0 team. Or 17-0 team, excuse me. I mean, that's the hope every year for fans, right? It's not realistic. There's going to be growing pains. None of these players, yes, big names that they were, but none were perfect. I think, and this is one thing I want to say, and then I'll end with kind of what I think of this game and what to look forward to. When the trade for Matthew Stafford was made, first of all, the value put in created this narrative a little bit. So I get that. When you give up 2 first-round picks plus your first overall pick quarterback who led you to a Super Bowl, expectations are going to be extremely high. So that I get. But then immediately pumped from media, fans, debate shows was Rams got their guy all in, Matthew Stafford. And it kind of like, it became this thing where Matthew Stafford is a great quarterback, former first overall pick out of Georgia, had a storied career in Detroit. Everyone talks about never truly had the pieces. There were some years there they did have some good defenses. You had Megatron. Never had a running game really, but had some good stuff in there and could never really get over that hump. So, but for some reason, all of a sudden he comes to LA and it became, and here we are we're in the off season too. So, when media is talking about football, what are they going to talk about other than the draft or free agency is storylines, narratives. And it all of a sudden became this thing where Matthew Stafford was like Tom Brady. Like the Rams getting Stafford was like they just got Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers. Matthew Stafford's always been 7 to 12 ranking of quarterbacks. I think he has elite arm talent, but he's a gunslinger, makes some poor decisions, forces some things. It's always been his thing. So you upgrade the position, but it wasn't like you go from Jared Goff to Aaron Rodgers or Jared Goff to Tom Brady. You upgrade, a little bit. A little more cerebral player, fits with McVay better. They had that vibe already. So I think that's why there's been this disappointment to an extent this year. Because you look at Stafford, 40 touchdowns, doubled Goff's touchdown rate last year. Not all that was on Goff. The offense had struggles in totality. But, he doubled his touchdowns. I think he finished with 15 interceptions, which is on line with literally his career. Like, he averages 11 to 17 touchdowns every year. That's what Stafford does. So I just think the expectation created around A, trading 2 first-round picks. I get it. But then B, for 4 months, it was just talked about what this move was going to give to the Rams, and it created this identity that the Rams got like a Tom Brady or an Aaron Rodgers. When they got Matthew Stafford, an upgrade, a good quarterback, but a quarterback that at times struggles, has deficiencies, has issues, and it's all played out that way. So when you look at the actual season as a whole, 12-5, winning the division, going into the playoffs as a 4 seed, had those narratives not been pumped up for 4 months, you would say, pretty damn good year. 40 touchdowns, MVP candidate for most of the season, almost broke his record for yards thrown ever. Running game looked better. So I'm just trying to say that I think that we get in this mindset, and this is kind of what I'm going to talk about with Brandon Staley too, is all these narratives get created, and then it's like we get lost in those, and we don't see it for what it was, and we don't see it for what it is. Now, for this trade to have actually been worth it, you need to go to the Super Bowl, or at least get pretty dang close. And if they lose this game one and done, then you absolutely fell short. 100%. You cannot go one and done in the playoffs. I'm just saying finishing 12-5, winning your division is a success. The trade was successful by regular season standards. Stafford was an upgrade. Statistically, leadership-wise, nothing against Jared Goff's leadership. They just lead differently. Net wavering. But now they got to go take care of business on Monday. And you have to beat this Arizona Cardinals team and move on to the next round to prove that all these moves were worth it. Where there's going to be a ton of question marks all offseason. Question marks about personnel, about decision-making at the top, about coaching decisions. In no way, shape, or form, guys, is Sean McVay going to be on the hot seat. But there'll be questions about his coaching style, about what he needs to change, about his maybe coordinators, defense coordinator Raheem Morris. I know that's a hot topic we talked a lot on Wednesday. If you didn't catch it, I had Jordan Arrigon on Wednesday. We get into that, so make sure to check that out if you're interested. But I like the Rams. I know Bo picked his Cardinals. I'm picking the Rams. I think that loss to the Niners came at a perfect time. They were on a 5-game winning streak. You get knocked down a peg, showing that you're not there yet, and now you can go on a 4-game winning streak and win the Super Bowl. I think it came at the right time. And now you go out at home on SoFi, hopefully a packed house, and take care of business. And I expect Stafford to have a really good game. And Sony Michel and Cam Akers have a good game on the ground. So, time will tell. Time will tell. We probably won't do our typical Monday at 5 show since the Rams literally play at 5. So we'll probably push to either Tuesday, or I'll just wait till my Wednesday show to get into all that what happens. So Rams fans tune in for that. UCLA. Quickly get into this. Jerry Azzinaro, very boomer bust defense, predicates on pressuring the quarterback, taking risks. And when those risks don't work, you get burned. And that happened a lot to these UCLA Bruins over his tenure, and specifically last year. You look at that Arizona State game. had like 6 plays of 40-plus yards and scored on all of them. Get rid of those 6 plays, UCLA wins. They're a 9-win football team competing for the Pac-12 title. It's a boom or bust defense. But with him gone, that now opens the door. And I'm really curious what Chip's going to do here. Because this for sure, I think, signifies Chip is, for sure back. There was a source came out yesterday that said they're basically away, like they're just dotting the T's or dotting the I's, crossing the T's on his contract extension. And that should come out before the January 16th deadline, which is in 2 days, where his buyout drops to 0. But some names I want you guys to think about. Jimmy Lake, former DC of Washington and then former head coach of Washington. Great defensive mind. Great recruiter. Great secondary coach. If he comes to Westwood, huge hire. Because now you have someone that will recruit. Because that's Chip is phenomenal in the transfer portal game. He doesn't really care much to recruit. Jimmy Lake can be a recruiter and turn this defense into a really good defense. I mean, the names that he's moved on to the NFL, Byron Murphy, Kevin King, Vita Vea. We can go down the list. The guy can coach defense. Has head coaching experience. That'd be a slam dunk. The other one I'd mention is Gary Patterson, former TCU coach. Now, he's been linked to Texas as a potential analyst or assistant down there to Steve Sarkisian. So not sure how likely that is, but it's worth a phone call. Looks great in a visor. I mean, who would be the better visor repper? Chip Kelly or Gary Patterson? I mean, but what he did at TCU over his tenure, I know it ended up with him, them parting ways, but he turned TCU for a few years there into a Big 12 contender. TCU is not a blue blood football school. And he turned them into a very special school, and he's a great defensive mind. And again, he could come in, recruit, give you a pipeline to Texas, and really do good things on this defense. So those are 2 names to look for. We'll see if he goes more for maybe a position guy to turn into a DC or goes for one of these big names. It kind of depends, too, on what money UCLA will be willing to offer. Because those are going to be guys that are demanding dollars. You're not going to get a DC, one of those guys, for under $1 million. They're going to be fairly high paid coordinators. So we'll see if the UCLA and Martin Jarmond and the boosters can open their checkbooks. But if you get one of those guys with DTR coming, with Caleb Williams' cloud still floating around LA as he met with UCLA this week, obviously still has ties to USC, met with them also. I mean, there could be a lot of things with all the guys transferring in already. Got some big name transfers. This could be a special team. Could be a special team. No one really talking about him. UCLA could be a very special team next year, especially if you get it right at the defensive coordinator position and turn that unit to a top 50 unit. They were in the hundreds last year. Huge. So we'll keep you posted on that. Last thing, and we got to be quick. I just want to at least put a bow on this Brandon Staley nonsense that keeps getting talked about. The amount of hate that he's all of a sudden getting and the amount of national talk about him needing to be fired after 1 year. Everyone's like, man, this is a talented roster. Should be in the playoffs. You have Justin Herbert. It is. And they should be in the playoffs. Absolutely. Brandon Staley made mistakes this year as a first-time head coach. No doubt. But calling for him being fired, this is a very talented roster, yes, but also had holes in very glaring places, defensive line specifically, linebacking core specifically, secondary depth specifically, offensive line depth specifically. You started an XFL player at right tackle all year. You signed Michael Schofield off the street to start at guard after Ode Ibushi went down. Like, there were depth issues all over this roster that they had to deal with. And so that alone is, it's, we can sit here and make excuses, but there were real live things that happened. Frank Reich and the Colts missed the playoffs. They were in the playoffs last year, and they were a Super Bowl contender, higher regarded team this year than the Chargers were. Cleveland Browns, probably the best roster on paper in football. They're out of the playoffs. I don't see Stefanski or Frank Reich getting the kind of stuff that Brandon Staley's getting. And I get the Chargers have the better quarterback, but top to bottom rosters, Colts and Browns have a better top to bottom roster with depth than the Chargers do. And they don't have a first-year head coach. They had the coach of the year last year in Kevin Stefanski, and Frank Reich, who I think is a phenomenal coach, great leader, also. They lose to Jacksonville their last week to miss the playoffs. So I don't get that. The fourth downs, everyone wants to make a big deal about he's like arrogant and like, but here's the facts, all right? And I get that everyone's like, well, you went for fourth down on your own 18. You're going against a Raiders team that's ranked 29th in red zone efficiency, red zone scoring. You do end up holding them to a field goal in that instance. Probably not the best. I don't even hate the call. I don't even hate the decision. I don't like the play call, running it, HB dive when you have Justin Herbert there. But specifically, he's looking at fourth downs in general. Everyone's acting like this guy's like out of his mind, always going for it on fourth down. You take out not the last game, the last two drives of that Raiders game. The last two drives where they were down 15. So obviously, any coach, you're going for it. They went for fourth down 6 times on those two drives. Take those two drives out. Chargers went for fourth down 28 times on the season, which is tied for 13th in the NFL. Almost the middle of the pack. 13th. Last year, that's 28. Last year, with Anthony Lynn, conservative Anthony Lynn that everyone talks about, Chargers went for fourth down 25 times. 3 less times than Brandon Staley. But somehow Staley is this arrogant, crazy, dumb coach that goes for it at unprecedented times. People don't like looking at facts. You like narratives. Quickly on the timeout. Because everyone, it's split. There's a good amount of people that are saying, yeah, the timeout doesn't mean anything. Get over it. Like what I'm trying to say. But there's a good amount of people that are literally saying the reason they did not tie that game is because of the timeout. But no one will explain why the timeout did that. So let's look at actually what happened. Raiders are on the 40-yard line. So at that point, if they don't gain another yard, it's a 57-yard field goal attempt for one of the better kickers in the league, Daniel Carlson. Just signed a big contract. They're lined up in shotgun. They have Hunter Renfrow in motion. There's 4 seconds left on the play clock. So they have to run a play. 38 on the game clock. So it's not like they can just let it run out. They're running some play from shotgun. They're not in kneel down formation. So if they run that, they're going to run a play. That's just a fact. You're not kneeling down from shotgun with a guy in motion. Unless, Rick Bisaccia is like the best chess player ever. So they're running a play. So let's say they run that play and they either throw it incomplete, run it, Chargers stop them. Then they probably either potentially let the play clock run out. But I would say they'll probably have a field goal attempt as time expires. Because they're in that under 60 range. Why wouldn't you try it? Some people say, well, you don't risk it. You block. It's so rare to happen. You tell your kicker, just make sure you get it up. It doesn't matter if you miss it, because if we tie, we're in. But they're going to have an attempt. So that's one scenario. Number 2 scenario, they convert the first down, and then they have a closer field goal attempt. Because again, they're not playing. Derek Carr, even in his interview, and this is where I think everyone had freaking out, is when asked about the timeout, he said, and asked, did that change your mindset? And he said, yeah, it changed our mindset. But we were never playing for a tie. We were playing to win. Changing mindset could literally mean it changed what play we were going to run. Didn't mean they were going to run the clock out. It meant maybe we were playing it safe. We'll attempt a long 57-yard field goal, see what happens. Whereas the timeout is like, okay, well, let's change it to a run now. Like, it's insane to me. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills here. Had they converted that 3rd and 4, then everyone's saying, man, and the Chargers didn't have the right formation, didn't have the right grouping in. Then you're thinking, man, what if they had the right grouping in? They could have stopped that. It came down to that, stopping the 3rd and 4. The timeout does not matter. You stop the 3rd and 4, it's a 57-yard field goal attempt. You don't stop it, it's closer. Chargers were doing whatever they could, Brandon Staley whatever he did, to force the longest field goal possible. You can't play as a coach and as a defense hoping the Raiders are playing for a tie. There's no agreement that they're playing for a tie. I know there's stuff coming out where the Raiders are saying they were. No. And you can't play that way. Hindsight's 2020. Everyone can sit here now and say, look, they were just going to play for the tie. No. That's not how you can coach in the game. It's crazy to me. It's ridiculous. I don't get it. The Chargers did not lose that game because of a timeout to get the correct personnel out there. They lost that game because they gave up 65 yards on the ground in overtime. Okay? They're not in the playoffs because they lost to the Houston Texans 2 weeks prior. They're not in the playoffs because against the Denver Broncos the first time they were almost shut out and Justin Herbert had one of the worst games of his career. That's why they're not in the playoffs. Not because of a timeout taken before a play was going to be run and you're getting your best guys out there for a chance to stop it. Period. End of story. And that's a bow on it for me as well. Brandon Staley going to be a great head coach in this league, and everyone just needs to sit back and watch. That's all I got, guys. That's the LA Football Show. Go Rams this weekend. Big one. Playoffs Monday night. I keep saying weekend, but it's Monday night against the Cardinals. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Ryan Dyrud. Be well. Enjoy the weekend. Hopefully see you at SoFi on Monday. Go Rams. Peace.